Welcome to Produce Talks.
This whole business is based on relationship and friendships.
Food is darn simple.
What can we do? What are other countries doing?
How important it is for industry to be talking about this.
We're going back to the farm. We're going back to the whole food.
Hello, and welcome to Produce Talks, the CPMA podcast. I'm Wally Burns, the new Education and Training Manager at CPMA. On this edition of Produce Talks, we have the opportunity to be joined with a past chair of CPMA and Produce Person of the Year, Larry McIntosh. We talk about how the produce industry has evolved over the years, the resilience of our sector, and the future hurdles that we will continue to overcome. CPMA would like to acknowledge Nature Fresh Farms as a sponsor of this podcast. Find out more about Nature Fresh Farms and how they are growing for a kinder future at www.naturefresh.ca. You can keep up with them on Instagram or Twitter at nature_fresh and on Pinterest at Nature Fresh, along with other social media. CPMA would like to welcome Fresh from Florida as a new sponsor of this podcast. Here is a quick message from Chef Justin of Fresh from Florida.
Hi, I'm Chef Justin Timoneri, Executive Chef with Fresh from Florida, a proud sponsor of this podcast. Fresh from Florida loves being a part of CPMA and sharing the message of what Florida farmers bring to the table. To learn more and to find hundreds of Florida fresh recipes that we develop for you in our test kitchen, visit followfreshfromflorida.com. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Fresh from Florida. Enjoy the show and keep cooking.
And now, here is Ron Lemaire, president of CPMA, speaking with Larry McIntosh.
Thanks, Wally. I'm pleased to take some time on this edition of Produce Talks to chat with past CPMA chair and the 2021 Produce Person of the Year, Larry McIntosh. I have known Larry since I joined the industry back in 1998. Larry had already enjoyed 4 years of his 27-year career in the produce industry. He brought a charm and charisma to the business and to peak of the market that truly began to change how we all promote, market, and drive produce consumption. Ask anyone in Manitoba if they know Larry, and they'll immediately say, of course, he's the guy with the carrot microphone. From interviewing kids with the carrot microphone to promoting Manitoba-grown veggies, Larry has been a trailblazer for our sector. Larry, welcome to Produce Talks.
Well, thank you for having me. And that was quite the introduction there. I'm almost afraid to say anything else after that fantastic introduction. So,
yeah, boy, Larry, you have a lot. You have a lot to carry forward here now. And you know what? I tell you, looking at your career and knowing where you came from, it's pretty exciting to have this conversation and chat a little bit about, where you see the industry going, where you see it has been. And, you came to the industry, the fresh produce industry, after having enjoyed a pretty great career, 16 years in the retail business. That must have been key and, bringing some experience that helped you navigate the new world of fresh produce.
Well, there's no question that being in retail helps you understand the retail end of it, obviously. But when you're in retail, if you don't have a product come in, you can't sell what you don't have. So that was certainly relevant to produce. But when you look at things like how you deal with people and financials and all those type of things, that's relevant to every industry that you would ever want to join. But the passion and the just in time and satisfying your customers and understanding how retailers think certainly made it interesting to come into the produce business.
Now, you jumped into the business and right away you started working with associations and other groups. Your volunteerism was a very big part of your personal life and professional life, and I know continues today, from the Manitoba Food Bank, the Canadian Red Cross, CPMA, and also on the international level, working with the PMA. Looking back, why did you get involved? Why do you think that was so important to, how you worked in produce?
Well, I think I was fortunate enough that I could do that type of thing. I mean, I certainly made time and in the evenings and weekends and the time we had, but the peak of the market, who I worked with for 27 years before retiring, was very supportive of that. And we had a great staff that allows me to be out of the office and volunteer for these things. But I would say whether it was volunteering with CPMA, which is still a fantastic experience to this day, or helping a food bank or the Canadian Red Cross, you learn so much. People are all going towards a common goal of helping people or increasing consumption of produce. It really is a passion. And although, I've retired from peak of the market now, I still volunteer probably 15 to 20 hours a week on the various organizations. And I love every moment of it. And the people, their hearts are all in the right places. And I can't recommend it more enough. And it's corny, and that's a vegetable pun, but you get way more out of it than you actually give to it. So it's highly recommended for anybody that has the opportunity to ever volunteer.
Another question around volunteerism. Do you see that changing today with the younger generation, coming into the business and a different approach to volunteerism, or is it still strong?
I think it's slightly different. I think that people have different expectations, but I can tell you with my experiences with the Canadian Red Cross that when there's a disaster or when we're helping out with COVID vaccines or whatever the case may be, that young people are coming to the forefront. And we're seeing in the produce business too, you're seeing younger people getting involved and wanting to be there and wanting to learn from, in the case of CPMA, some of the legends of the business or some of those committees that they can learn so much about their career in produce, but also really learn a lot about life and about ethics and that type of thing.
So, in our intro, we talked a little bit about the carrot microphone. So I can't go any further without asking you the question, and try and maybe explain to the listeners, what is it with the carrot microphone? And it's really become almost synonymous with your legacy.
I'm so glad we came back to the carrot microphone. As you're talking about that, I thought anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about is going to think that's a little different. The carrot microphone, peak of the markets, we wanted to do some commercials to talk about local, and that was way back in the 90s before it was as prevalent as it is today. But we were doing a TV commercial out in a park, and at the end of the commercial, I was to throw carrots into the air and catch it, kind of a end of the commercial. And I said, you know what if we make this a carrot mic? And I remember the TV camera person and the producer that was there saying, you would do that? You would talk to a carrot? And I said, well, why not? Why wouldn't you want to do that? We're in the vegetable industry. So that became, we did the commercials that day. Every commercial that we did for TV after that, they taped the microphone on the back of the mic, or they got really creative with what they did. And it became a bit of a signature, if you want to call it that. When I would speak at local charity events, when I had the honor of coming to the podium, more often than not, they would have a carrot up there on top of the microphone. So it became a neat way of saying, hey, we're in the produce business. We can have fun at the same time and be out there.
And you know what, you talk about that in I know different articles over time about how hard the business is, but you still need to have fun. And how important is that balance, and day in and day out, relative to what you said earlier about just-in-time delivery and a range of other stressors everyone in our business feels?
Everybody in the business feels stressors, and every day is so different because what you thought was going to happen at the beginning of the day rarely does. So I think it's important that you have fun. I mean, we used to say that, I love 90% of my job. There's the paperwork and some things that come up. Maybe it's not your favorite part of your job, but if you love 90% of your job, you can have fun. The people you work with every day, you spend as much time with them as you do your family in many cases. So there's no reason to take it as a challenge. Look at it, whatever the case may be. And there's lots of challenges, but how can we overcome it? And I think that's why produce has done so well during COVID. And, we've reacted well to things, but we're used to that because it rains or there's droughts or trucks break down, and we maneuver very well.
Well, you know what, you're talking about some of those challenges. I know after 27 years, I'm sure you've seen your fair share, some of those big hurdles that you had to face and how you've had to navigate them. Looking back, are there any, one or two that you really say, wow, that's something that I'm really proud of, how we were able to deal with it, how we were able to adjust, pivot, and find solutions?
I think three things that we take for granted today. One is back when I started getting produce, sometimes we had some bad players in the marketplace that didn't pay on a timely basis or didn't pay people at all. And the organization, along with others, came together and created the Dispute Resolution Corporation, the DRC, which was a voluntary organization at the time that helped make sure people got paid. And that's still here today and even stronger than it was then. Food safety, we were just talking about food safety back then. Everybody, believed in it, to a system now where we're on, looking at world standards and being audited. But that was all developed by the industry as well. So the proactive part of the industry is interesting. They're forming the DRC to resolve disputes in the industry when they do happen. It doesn't happen often. Or the food safety, putting that together and having it to grow where it is today, certainly are very accomplishing moments over the years. And something as simple as the Canadian Horticultural Council and the Canadian Produce Marketing Council were together at the time, one representing farms and one representing the entire industry. And they've separated to be two different organizations today, but work super closely together. And that says what the industry does. Working closely together it's what makes us successful.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you're bang on. Have you ever really seen that? Because I know you are, again, volunteering with a range of different organizations and different industries. And I know when I came into the fresh produce industry, I was amazed at how everyone is extremely competitive. But when we sit around an association table, and or if there's a real issue impacting our businesses, it's amazing how everyone will work in one common direction. Have you seen that anywhere else?
I've never seen that anywhere else. In my retail days, we would no more talk to a competitor about trying to resolve a trucking issue or whatever the case may be as working together on issues than I've seen in the produce industry. As you said, we're in meetings and we're all competitors and we all don't go down the line of talking about competitive issues, but we're talking about, how do we make food safety better? How do we resolve the pallet shortage? How do we find out more shipping containers from overseas? We all work on that together. We share our intelligence. Quite often we bring in other people from our companies to help solve the industry issue for the betterment of the industry. And I've never seen a working environment like that in anything I've been involved in.
Well, you know what? We may have a couple big issues coming down the pipe too. I know over the last year, the concept of a food industry code of conduct has been brought forward. Provincial ministers of agriculture and the federal minister have gotten together and asked industry across all food to try and find a solution, create something that can support better business within Canada and also better access to food for Canadians. Now, you mentioned the DRC. We've been fortunate that we've had this fair and ethical trading mechanism in place since 2000. Now that you're retired, relative to the broader context of a food industry code of conduct, how do you see that coming together? Do you think it's possible?
I do think it's possible. And you're never really retired from produce. I'll just say that as well. But I think it is possible. I mean, some of the retailers want to have it involved. Certainly, a lot of the suppliers and shippers. We just want to have a set of rules that everybody knows how to play by, that whether it's voluntary, and hopefully it will be voluntary. I mean, I'd like to see that, but maybe government needs to be involved. But hopefully there'll be a voluntary set of guidelines that every retailer and wholesaler and grower and shipper in this country can look at and say, these are fair charges, these are fair ways of conducting it, and have some consistency. I understand retailers have costs, growers have costs. How can we work this out to make it fair for everybody, make it more transparent, and build the industry? And really what the industry is about is selling produce and helping Canadians be healthier and Americans and all over the world. But how can we concentrate our efforts on that and not worry about some of the basic things that we could put into some guidelines? But it's going to be a challenge. We have a lot of personalities involved in these discussions.
Yeah, you're right. And you know what? That's also part of our success relative to some of those personalities. And while you can, maybe see some friction here and there throughout the supply chain, not only in our business, but across all food, I think it's really exciting to see where this can go. And you know what? Looking at some of the market domestically, but I want to also shift now to the global market. You've been involved on shipping product around the world. And over the time you've been in the industry, those markets have really shifted and changed. On the international level, what's been some of the more exciting things you've seen change over your 27 years?
I think at the international level, it's becoming a smaller world. And I know that's a bit of a cliche. And I've had the pleasure to travel parts of the world and see, but I'll go back to my experience when I started 27 years ago. You didn't expect to see asparagus in your retail store 52 weeks a year. It just what didn't happen. You had local, you had California, but now it's expected to be there all the time. Whatever that product may be, it's, with very few exceptions, they expect it, the retailers and the consumers expect to have it all the time. And we've made that possible through, putting in cold storage in some countries, the shipping lines, the trucking. It has actually become a very small world, and the selection that we have in North America of produce is unsurpassed. And we've learned from other countries, what we see happening in the UK or in Australia, and learned from that and put that into some of our packaging, some of our retail stores. It really has become a small world that works together. I mean, currently we're having lots of issues, with containers and getting them overseas and getting products shipped both ways. But the industry is working on it together from both sides of the ocean.
Now, you mentioned that COVID has certainly thrown curves at us and supply chain issues. But in some ways, have you seen the global market almost constrict a little bit, almost squeezing us back into that local discussion relative to food security and food sovereignty? And what do we need to do to effectively have the right systems? And the bigger question is, what is the solution on that side of the coin?
Well, one of my volunteer aspects of the Canadian Food Policy Advisory Committee for the Minister of Agriculture, and we're having those discussions about, food security and buying local, and how do we support it. And it is interesting. Food waste is another one, of course. It's interesting to see everybody's perspectives. And you're right. We're looking at, can we have more local? Can we have it not be more secure because it's closer and we don't have to worry about the transportation costs? But we still have to realize we're an international community. We're not always going to have carrots available in Canada. We're not always going to have, we're not going to ever have oranges available in Canada, odds are, at least, hopefully not with global warming. So we're a big community that needs to continue shipping, but certainly there's been more focus on local. People have recognized their farmers more. And I think that's important, but we are a worldwide industry as well.
And, talking about some of that change and the global nature, I know a couple big topics keep coming up now, and sustainability is one of those areas. You've talked a little bit about innovation and everything from what we consider basic business around our cold storage and how we manage our supply chains. But I want to go to sustainability and talk a little about the big topic of plastic packaging. From your experience when you first started and a lot of our product being bulk to where we are today, how do you see that navigating, in the next 5 or 6 years?
I think the industry is going to work on reducing plastics. I think we all want that as an industry and as people of this earth. So, but I also think that some are going to rush and maybe aren't going to make the right moves. They're going to have to change. And what I'm saying by that is we have a couple of issues that we talked about. One is, not wasting food. So some of the packaging that we use in produce helps the shelf life, helps it make last longer at the retail store and when people get it home in their fridge, and we're not wasting food. So we need to have a careful balance between what we're looking at in plastics and other materials, what's recyclable, what's biodegradable, and what protects the life of food. And frankly, right now, people love just to buy packaged food more so than bulk because, they feel more secure about grabbing a bag and staying in the stores no more time than they need to, or maybe it's a food safety issue in their minds. But I think that we need to do it carefully. And I'm so happy that CPMA has got the plastic committee working on that, because there is better ways of doing what we're doing, but we don't want to overreact and end up having food go bad, because that's not going to help the world's population either.
I want to go back to the marketing side, Larry. over your whole career, we always sort of jokingly looked at, the carrot videos and said, geez, you're right. You're saying, hey, why not a carrot? You have done so many innovative things around marketing a commodity. Because in the end, everyone's trying to figure out what is the brand? How do you drive brand in the produce business? How do you drive a commodity and increase consumption? For the listeners, is there any one or two tips that you can share saying, you know what, this is how you do it?
Well, I think passion and enthusiasm comes into it. And I'm certainly that about the produce industry. And I was about peak of the market in my time there. But you do it with passion and you put it all in. So, I mean, everything you do, if I was out to a dinner, I would talk about produce. And that's a great thing at a dinner because everybody eats produce. So it's an easy icebreaker. But you talk about your brand and you talk about what's behind it. My license plate on my vehicle was Peak, which was the name of our company. Everything we did, we gave away food at the side of our highway that goes past our building. We'd ask people to pull into our driveway, get a free 5-pound bag of potatoes with a donation to a food bank. So they got potatoes and the food bank got some money and we matched it with a donation of food to the food bank. Different ways you can get your image out there. You can't always spend millions of dollars on these things, but what you can do with passion and getting out there and being the brand, I guess is really what I'm saying. And talking about produce is good for you. We're in a great industry. When I was offered the job at Peak of the Market 27 years ago, the same day I was offered a job with a tobacco company. And certainly I would be more passionate about something that's great for people's health as I ended up going into the produce business.
So you sit back and you look at it after 27 years, and you start looking at everything you've invested in the business and that passion. And, we have what we call our CPMA Passion for Produce program, which is a program that helps mentor young produce professionals to keep building their career. And I know you've been an active participant as a mentor in the program. What would you tell a young produce professional when you're sitting at the speed mentoring sessions and they're looking at you going, okay, here I am, now what? What's the key advice you give a young professional for our sector?
Well, I want to say the Passion for Produce program is probably the best program I've ever seen in the produce industry, and probably any industry. It's a program where young professionals can apply and get chosen, and many do every year. And I know I put 3 or 4 people through it, as our company has put 3 or 4 people through it, and they have nothing but fantastic things to say about the program. But I mean, you talk about the industry, you're sitting down and you're talking, their questions are, how do you do it? How do you bob and weave and pivot so quickly? How do you call a customer up and communicate with people? Some really basic things that somebody could be intimidated by. My advice is, EDI and text and emails are fantastic, but sometimes just pick up the phone. They don't get that many phone calls anymore, and they don't want that many phone calls. But when you have an issue, pick up the phone and talk to them. Our industry, whether it's a buyer and a wholesaler or a retailer or a food service, are very receptive to talking about issues. I always say, if there is an issue, get out front of it, talk about it. Don't let them find out, when the product doesn't come in, and be honest and straightforward with them. And you'll have some lifelong friendships in the industry, as I know I certainly have.
Yeah, it's funny. This industry is built on relationships, isn't it? And when you start looking at some of the big challenges we've all dealt with, it couldn't have been addressed without actually having that phone call. And I totally agree with you. Everyone loves the speed of technology, and whether it's email, text, or EDI. But is there? How should I say this? Is the world changing too quickly that we're going to lose that one-on-one connectivity within our business?
I worry about that. Even talking about some of our sales reps they're younger in the business I was with, they would do all those other things, the text, the emails, etc., but they wouldn't pick up the phone. And now with Zoom calls and team calls and everything else, it's very easy not to visit customers. And that day will come when we need to get out and visit our customers. We're practical And, whether we're shaking hands or not, or just building relationships, that is part of what the business is. And I can't say that it's more important in any other business than ours. It's about relationships. When I got into produce all those years ago, I was from retail, which was very structured, and got purchase orders, and we had fax machines back then, etc. And I went into produce, and people would take a phone call and say, "Okay, I'll take this many quantity at this price," and nothing was written down, and it worked very well. Everybody trusted everybody, and you could work out issues. We've come a long ways in systems now, but really, it's still about the relationship. It's still about giving your word. It's still about the handshake, although it's virtual these days. That makes a company strong and makes our industry strong. And as we all know, by working together, if our business goes up, everybody benefits. And that's something we can never forget about, is increasing consumption makes people healthier, and it helps everybody's business.
So I want to talk about the consumption side. And you mentioned the program you ran at Peak, where you could come in and donate to the food bank and get potatoes, and that you guys would match that, which is fabulous. But you were also innovative on a few other programs. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Because I remember there was a school program that you ran where, instead of, I think, the kids selling chocolate bars for fundraisers at school, they did something very different.
Yes, that's right. We came up with a farm to school program that what was a fantastic program. And basically what it was is schools or daycares would sell a bundle of vegetables, and they would keep half the price. So it would be carrots, onions, potatoes, in our case, the vegetable items, the main items. There'd be two different packs and different prices, and $14 and $28, I think they were. And the school would sell them, and they would keep half the money for whatever it was, for new swing sets or a band trip or a hockey trip or whatever it might be. But they would keep half that product, and our growers would pay for the transportation. And the unique part of that is, the school started talking about produce and local farms and all nutrition that got worked into the curriculum. Not that we could work in the curriculum, but the teachers were automatically kind of talking about it, some at least. They would get fresh vegetables, which was good for them, at prices that were competitive with the retail markets. And the retailers were on side with this. We did this once a year. The schools could do it once in the fall. So we weren't competing with anybody. We were just increasing consumption of produce. And the growers would pay for the freight no matter where it went in Manitoba. So we would ship by plane, train, and automobile, so to speak, all over the province. So Winnipeg for us was easy. That's where we're located. But Churchill, Manitoba, you are sending it on a train. That's 3 days to go up there. Another community, we actually flew it into the community on a plane, and they came and picked it up on their snowmobiles at the airport. So, but it was the same price for every school. So it was great value in the north. And now we've expanded that program to cover Saskatchewan and Alberta as well. So it's helping schools. It's talking about vegetables. And yes, our growers took the lesser price and paid for freight. But in the long term, it's all about getting people vegetables in front of them and learning about local.
Community. I think that's the right word, right?
That's
it really
the right
does.
word,
Yeah. It's truly amazing. So, Larry, before we wrap up, Produce Person of the Year in 2021. It's one of those awards, and I always, coming into the industry back in '98, I sat there, and over time I've seen so many people receive the awards, and everyone's so deserving. And when they receive it, everyone is so humble about, geez, I don't know why I received this award. And I sit back and go, oh my gosh, leaders, trailblazers, and you now being one of those individual recipients. What are your thoughts about receiving the award this year?
It is unbelievable. If you could see my desk right now, it's sitting right beside me. I polish it every week. I'm very proud to receive that. And I look at the people that have received it over the years, and they are legends, icons of the industry, most of which I've known in the last 20 years. But even prior to that, before I was in the industry, I know about these people and what they've done. And I don't put myself in the categories that they're in. So when I received this award, over the top, unbelievable, and honored. I still think it's probably a mistake. I got chosen by mistake. I don't know what happened, but I can't tell you how thrilled about it I am. And I'll tell anybody that wants to listen about how proud I am about this award, because it really is the pinnacle in the produce career. And like I said, legends have received it before, and now I've received it, and I'm humbled.
Well deserving, Larry. And so before closing, I just want to ask you the key question here. You know, we've gone through the pandemic. We're pushing through what some consider a fourth wave in different parts of the country and around the world. You know, we continue to pivot as an industry and shift. And you mentioned that a few times. How do you see the future unfolding? What do you see coming down the pipe?
I see a ton of challenges coming down the pipe, and I'll use the word challenges versus problems because challenges can be overcome. And I think that, you know, there's going to be more talk about local and food security and how to reduce food waste, but logistics is certainly a huge issue in our industry today. Labor, the plastics, as you mentioned earlier, sustainability. There's lots of things out there, but if you go back 20, 25 years, I'm sure more, we had challenges then too, and we worked together as an industry. We formed committees such as the plastic committee you have now, and we worked through it. And I'm sure we're going to come through this as well. But I think we are probably more flexible than a lot of industries, and bobbing and weaving, as I quite often say, is kind of what we do. And I know we're going to have these discussions, and I know there's going to be some tough ones and border issues and things happen around the world, but I see a very bright future for produce. I'm excited to be in produce, and I'm hoping that the next generation is excited to be there as well, because again, nobody can say there's anything wrong with produce. It's nothing but healthy. We're on the side of angels, as I've heard say before, and it's a great industry to be in, and I'm excited about the future.
Well, Larry, 2021 Produce Person of the Year, thank you for making this episode such an interesting and informative session. Thank you to the listeners for joining in. And until next time, fill half your plate with fruit and veggies, continue to seek out new knowledge, and never stop growing.